free to. Okay. So welcome everyone. This is the session of the Science Communication for Research Data Interest Group. This is a group that is still being set up, which is partly also the topic of our session today. It's the first session. There will be another repeat one on the 22nd. So hopefully, I mean, some of your colleagues that couldn't join this might be able to join that one. That's at a different time. Let's see if I can move. So, I mean, you're quite familiar with these housekeeping points, so I won't go too much through them. I'll just say that please feel free to turn on, of course, your cameras. It's always nice to see the faces of the people that we're trying to engage into this conversation. We have a link to collaborative notes and a group webpage that I warmly invite you to sign up for. There's a mailing list associated to that, so it's one way to keep in touch. So for the agenda, we wanted to start with a short round of introduction, but of course without putting anyone on the spot, but we wanted to kind of get a feeling of who's in the room. So I'll start with I'll start and then I'll pass on the floor to Bahare. My name is Timea Viro. I'm one of the potential or candidate co-chairs for this group. I am pursuing though this activity as part of my PhD project, which is focused on open science communication for research data. I'm currently doing that at Surrey University. And yeah, I'll pass it to Bahare. She's the other co-chair on the call with us. Oh, we can't hear you now.
So my name is Bahara Heravi. So I am one of, I guess, the other potential co-chairs of the group. And my area I'm a professor in AI and media with interest in science communication. And my area of work revolves very much around communication of data storytelling, and so on. And I have great interest in Tim as a PhD also, because I'm her supervisor.
Full disclaimer.
Yeah.
Okay, who would like to go next? Oh, who should we put the spotlight on? Oh, Natalie.
I'll start talking. Yeah, I can't stand the pain of waiting for someone else. So Natalie Harrower, I'm the executive director of something called the Canadian Research Data Centre Network. We're just starting to get involved in RDA. And one of the things we try to do is make the connection between the research that our researchers do and the kind of policy implications. So there's a science communication element in there. But Timea also knows me as her ex-boss at the Digital Repository of Ireland, which is my ex-role.
I'm Andrea Medina Smith. I am a data librarian at the US's National Institute of Standards and Technology. I am also a PhD candidate but I'm working on looking at the impact of several public access or open access memos within the US context on open data and the like. But I also work within our library with our publishing librarians. So we do a lot with scientific communication within our library.
Well, we lost Bob in the meantime, or I would have also liked him to say a few words. Anyone else? I see your cameras are off, so it's not to. If you do not wish to speak, that's also perfectly fine.
Bob is back.
Yeah, Bob is back. I don't think his audio is it's working, but if he gets the the audio working and he does want to introduce himself, I'll stop as we proceed. I just wanted to say a little bit what's on the agenda for the session. So we wanted to go through a little bit of the status of the charter and of the group, and based on the structure and the status of the charter to kind of try to take a few steps forward in the mapping of the science communication priority topics that the group would be looking into. Hopefully there will be also from the people present some contributions, maybe things that that you would like to highlight and in shaping this discussion around the priority topics. And then we wanted to also highlight as a particular point of interest the role of the science communicator for research data as one of the potential directions that the group can take forward. Then, of course, hopefully we can outline a set of actions to take forward with the group. I don't know if people are familiar with how the groups function within the RDA, but they generally go through an endorsement process. So interest groups have something called a charter. The working groups have something called a case statement that goes through community review and then also goes through the official endorsement of the TAB, the Technical Advisory Board, and that of the Council. This evaluation or review is done based on, for example, for the interest groups, based on the charter. Here you have a link to a short link to the charter, but I think it's also in the chat, so it would be quick access from there. I'd like to go through maybe 4 of the key sections of the charter. So the problem statement, the focus and priority topics, what we foresee as potential outcomes from the groups and the synergies within the RDA. So what are the groups and the other sort of entities within the RDA that we could be collaborating with to reach the goals that we have set. Contributions are welcome directly on the document, but we were also hoping to have a nice discussion on these key sections and on what's currently written within the charter. So I'll just go through these four items quickly. So these 4 sections, I've got a set of slides or 4 slides for each of these, but then I can also open up the charter for you to see it and maybe have a kind of an overall understanding of how it's structured. So yeah, the problem statement, as you can imagine, revolves around well, the hope that we would establish the science communication for research data is one of the key research data management best practices. And of course, it also builds on a lot of the activity that the RDA has had around open science and around the sharing aspects and of opening all of the different components of the scientific process, and especially research data, to a wider community and wider audiences beyond academia and specialized research communities. So this is also connects to some of the interests that you have also mentioned in your short introductions. So to make sure that we're covering the major topics and also have a sort of a starting point, we have identified or narrowed down to 4 key sort of areas or priority topics. These are science communication practices and the stakeholders, science communication and the research data lifecycle. So positioning this activity within the entire research data management, research data lifecycle. Again, professionalizing science communication for research data and science communication and media, because we strongly think that there's a set of transferable skills and tools and things that that can be learned in common with media. And Bahare is here for for additional additional insights on that topic. This, of course, this effort aligns very well with the RDA agenda and its vision for researchers and innovators to openly share and reuse data across technologies, disciplines, countries to address the grand challenges of society. So this is why we have been pushing for the setup of this group, because we think it is within the vision and the agenda of the RDA and of its efforts related to open science. Again, to narrow it further down, we've also defined a set of outputs that the group would generate. And we would start with a vocabulary or a science communication ontology, just because a lot of the terms that are being used, we take them for granted, and it's important to understand what we actually mean by science communication. What are the tools? What are the channels? What's the difference between science communication and open access? And so on. A lot of these sort of things that people have a feeling of understanding, but then again, when the discussion goes further in detail, it's not that clear. But a vocabulary is always a very good place to start. Then we were considering defining a set of case studies. So a set of case studies looking from the practitioner's side, so collecting perspectives from the practitioners, and another set of case studies that actually look at specific research data. So either defined by the domain, by the type of research data, defined by its use. Regardless, it's the point is to kind of to understand if there are common practices, if there are things that are done differently, and what can be learned to make things better for everyone. Then, based on the case studies, we would define a toolkit for the practices. And this would be also in close collaboration with the sort of media. And by media, we also mean data journalists and scientific communication, which is slightly different than what we envision here. Then, of course, going back to the sort of profile of the science communicator, that would be a nice thing to have also as an output from the group. In terms of the synergies, there are 4 major groups that we have identified. So a collaboration with the Engaging Researchers Interest Group, with the hope that the researchers can contribute with case studies for our outputs. The Professionalizing Data Stewardship Interest Group, to understand and leverage some of the lessons learned that they have put forward, some of their outputs, and learn some things from the way that they have approached the problem in the case of the data stewards. Then, of course, 2 groups around the education and training for handling research data and sharing rewards and credits, and the summer schools for hopefully being able to include science communication in their curriculum. Because if we so if the outputs from the group could be appropriate, I think that would be a good way to help further raise awareness around the topic. So I don't know, should I can go back and show the charter now, or we can actually go back and forth between the topics to kind of understand where are the areas that people feel that these can be further improved with questions or comments, if there are any topics that we should be further addressing. Anyway, better to formulate the problem statement. Any outputs that you feel would be relevant beyond this. Yeah, all input is more than welcome.
I had one thought, and this is just something that's come up recently, is that, of course, science communication is for researchers of all stages, but I think in an environment where we're looking at the reform of research assessment, it's probably particularly important for early career researchers, because it's about, how do you communicate the research outward, not necessarily following some of the tried and true traditional pathways, or at least in addition to that. So I don't know what happened. There was the new group, or it might still be at an interest group stage on research.
Evaluation.
Yeah. It's Francoise started it up. Somehow that one was canceled, but there may be another session. I don't want to add too many things, because you've got quite a few connections in there, but even if it's just to sort of send a note to that group and say there are things going on here, that'd be useful.
Yeah, I agree, and it's been a little so I'll get to that as well. I've started with the plugging a little bit sooner, but I am doing a survey to understand the practices of science communication within the RDA, and one of the things that I would like to collect, or we would like to understand a little bit better, is the connection between these practices, awareness, and the career stage. And that's one of the questions that we have in the survey to try to understand a little bit better how these connect, and if the practices differ, what are the concerns and the challenges that people at different career stages perceive in terms of science communication. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. Anything else? Do these seem as I don't know, a good way to kick off the activities in terms of potential outputs? I mean, I've been also looking at what other groups, similar groups have how other similar groups have approached the problems within the RDA. And the charter itself speaks of case studies. So I think that going down the route of the case studies to try to understand really clear examples is quite beneficial. Any thoughts on maybe how these case studies could be shaped? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm chatty today. The only other thought, and this is probably because my head is in the middle of European Commission proposal reviews, so any of you that have done that will know this. There's always this very strong distinction made when you're trying to talk about the project that you're proposing, a research project, between dissemination and communication. And it's clear that we're falling on the side of communication here, but I just wonder if something around teasing out that specificity might be useful, because it's like, it's followed through as an expectation in European funding in particular,
Mhm.
through kind of every category. And then, and also perhaps maybe putting a finer point on it, and I'm sure this is what you're, part of what you're thinking about with the last bullet point, but how do you separate out science communication from, like, is it just communication of your research, or is this a category that we're looking at as being unique in terms of comms? I don't know what I'm saying there. That's a half-baked thought, but
I think
yeah.
this is some of the things that actually we've discussed with Timea from the beginning, and that probably that was more my area of interest, in a sense of how you get it out there more than just publishing the results of your research or communication of your research, because of my interest in media and journalism. And that was kind of a little bit the idea of how we can take ideas from science journalism or data journalism to see how we can successfully, in a sense, communicate and promote the results of research, which then feeds into your comment about early stage career researchers, or even researchers of any stage. If they see the results of their work is communicated in a way other than boring papers, basically, then they are going to eventually make a better impact and eventually benefit from a higher level of engagement and citation, which especially for early stage career researchers and any other academic, is very important. So I think this is a kind of a full circle that needs to be addressed. And you're right, it is missing from a lot of science communication discussion, as far as I understand, in other places.
And more to that, at least in the literature, there is an extensive conversation around the science communication models. So like the dialogue, the participatory, or like the sort of models that say the scientist just communicates the results of their work towards the broad public, but there isn't an actual exchange. While some of the models speak about participation, where actually there is a dialogue, and there is a clear role that audiences and the broader public has in the scientific process. So in that case, the distinction is of a different type. It's not about just communicating the results. There's an actual feedback loop and an actual mechanism that is, according to some authors and to some scholars, it's essential for the actual health of the scientific process. Because scientists don't know everything. They know a lot, but they don't know everything. And the exchange with the people not only makes their efforts more efficient, because they get adopted sooner, and people are involved, but they also learn themselves from the exchange with the broader audiences. And this is also part of this sort of participatory decision-making aspects that are currently, well, promoted in different areas.
Something that you said just made me think of one other thing, and you must have this in I haven't looked at the case study in a while, sorry, but who you're communicating to in terms of audiences is also key. So I would have thought in the past of science communication more as trying to get the message out to the general public, in order to get the word out of what you're doing, because it's important, but to garner support and that sort of thing. In the situation I'm in now, what we're trying to do is get that communication to policymakers. And that's a very different kind of audience, because what you communicate, it isn't just, oh, isn't this great and important? It's how can you actually take this and do something with it that is outside of the research world in a lot of cases, right? And it probably depends on what discipline or domain you're working in, how relevant that is, but it's the thing that's been on my mind in terms of the communication side a lot, so. And you have to shape that communication in particular ways. It has to be shaped to demonstrate potential policy areas, to speak to very specific audiences, but it is a form of communication. It's not dissemination. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of falls under the very broad topic that we have identified. So what are the practices and the stakeholders? Because specific practices are for specific stakeholders, and specific stakeholders require certain certain practices to make the actual. But yeah. I have it at least in my survey. Sorry for the second for the additional plugin, but it is one of the other sort of component of the entire landscape that I think weighs in on the way things are done, and on which there isn't that much light. So yeah.
I think that the results of the survey would actually be really interesting in kind of getting closer to some of these questions that kind of you're asking and we're discussing here, and kind of defining a lot of what is science communication, who are the stakeholders, what should we do about it, and so on. So I see that as an important kind of step in kind of this process. Timera, just one thing. I think the charter document is the access is closed, so if you are able to open it, that'd be good.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. Thank you. Should
And just and I just want to kind of note again that if anybody wants to kind of come into the discussion, please do. It is kind of not a one directional. So we're hoping to be able to get as much discussion and conversation that we can in this group as we are forming the basis of the group and how we want it to be in the future.
Yeah, so we will follow up on the with the group and share again the charter link and make a call for contributions. So we were hoping to, from this conversation, to add some, maybe an additional, or take some of the, or reshuffle the priority topics. Maybe if people feel that there would be other outputs that might be relevant, that can also be, of course, shifted towards something more meaningful. This is our starting point at the moment, and we wanted, and we'll launch a call also to the mailing list about potential volunteers to do a review, an additional review of the charter. Just to make sure that it's a little bit, yeah, freshened up with new perspectives. Ricardo, please.
Oh, hello. Yeah,
Hello.
can you hear me? Yeah. So I was just curious about what do you mean with research data? Primary data, secondary data, which kind of source?
Well, it's everything and anything that you are able to share and would like to communicate about.
Because
So it's,
we were talking about, for example, policy advisors. Yep. So I want to analyze some stuff, but one of the problem that I suffer by different stakeholders is related with from where is the information coming. So I'm sharing you a link of the metadata registered for one institution, European institution, and they declare almost nothing in Crossref. So if I want information for policy makers of any kind of profile, or research or make it valuable. For sure, I can't do it because maybe in the primary source is all the information that I need. But if I'm going to collect a lot of research data or research products, I can have that information. So it's really, I guess, it's related to a stakeholder, how to communicate the information that I want to, but also the quality of that information actually is a big, I guess it's a big problem.
Yeah, I think that that's a more underlying problem, if I understand your question well. So it's a provenance issue, and it's kind of one of the underlying problems that RDA is trying to manage through different groups. We know that there's sensitive data that can't be shared, but in that case, in where there's quality data, you have the possibility of nonetheless communicating and, or at least pointing towards it and highlighting through information that is present in the metadata. So in that case, at least I know that people speak at the level of, or communicate at the level of metadata. But yeah, speaks more to the point that it depends on the data, which is why we were also hoping to get like these very specific case studies on the different types of data. So how do you communicate if you have sensitive data? How do you communicate about certain data that has provenance issues? This can be also an interesting case study. How easy is it to communicate when the data is openly shared and it's available and it's well curated? And who are those good curators that allow this type of work? But also from the perspective of practitioners like yourself who have these sort of problems. Okay, so you have this problem. Did you manage to solve it? How did you do that? What's the sort of communication that has come out of it? Yeah, I think at least your example would make two good case study topics. I mean, I know I haven't answered your problem. I've broken it up into more pieces, but hopefully it's digestible and it's shelved in the in the right place. But yeah, undoubtedly it's one of the challenges. Anyone else struggling with similar things that would advise maybe us to add different topics to this? Yes.
What are you looking for in terms of the case studies? Sorry, where does that fit into the process? Is that?
So we have our charter. There's a sort of a template for that. We're trying to define what the group will be addressing and what would be the foreseen outcomes from the activities of the groups. And the case studies will hopefully be one of the sort of categories of outputs of the group, and would be something that we would be sharing on the RDA website. It would be one of those. It won't be a recommendation because our group is an interest group, an exploratory group that looks at different topics and generates hopefully helpful resources for the RDA community on a specific topic. So yeah, but
Okay,
our hope is that
yeah.
it would also then feed into developing this toolkit of practices.
I might be able to get someone on my team to help with a case study, because the data that the researchers in my network work with will never be shared. Like there's no chance. It's very, very, it's highly sensitive. But there are still things that you can communicate about that if you have other aspects of open science in place and fair and the rest, but the challenges around it, and yeah, I think there might be a possibility there. So if that's useful.
That would be very, very useful. So here we also try to kind of make some suggestions on how to tackle or where to start for these to generate these outputs. So for the case studies, a suggestion would be to develop a template for how to collect this information and send it out to organizations, or maybe share it through within the group to collect ideas. And they can also become success stories if people prefer to present it as such, but that would be my suggestion as a starting point. So to have a template set up for the case studies, and then do a crowdsourcing for the interesting ones, or the not so interesting ones, but they have to be, you know, on the topic, and hopefully people are willing to contribute to them.
So from working, I was a former co-chair of Engaging Researchers, and I would say we would have had more success, especially in the second round, with identifying and going and collecting the case studies ourselves versus waiting for people to do it. The other way that we did have some success, I believe, in one of our early case study calls was actually at a plenary in the room saying, okay, you've got 20 minutes, go and write a stub for us and we will get back to you.
Yeah.
Uh,
It sounds that
Yeah,
that also,
short interviews. We did follow-ups with interviews for some of them. But
yeah.
don't wait for them to come to you, unfortunately.
No, yeah.
If you can set up half an hour, say to somebody, I'm going to ask you these series of questions, send it to you in advance, and you just have to answer them in the half an hour, you'll have a lot better chance of getting an answer than sending it off and saying, it'll only take half an hour. And then 3 years later, you're still waiting. So yeah.
Yeah. That can be a very, for one of the next plenaries, I think it's gonna be, the next one is in Costa Rica, so that might be a little bit of a kind of a difficult destination for some of us, but certainly one of the, I mean, it doesn't necessarily also have to be a plenary. If there are different other occasions where people might meet and can do a little bit of quick RDA work, that's also an option. But yeah, I take your point. It's very valid. Okay, other experiences with case studies. Have you had any experience with building a vocabulary? So, yeah, you're nodding. Also for the engaging researchers?
No, that's just part of my work. I've done a couple taxonomies and vocabularies at work. There's actually an interesting new technique that's using AI. I don't understand it 100%, but there's a colleague of mine that's managed to come up with, and this is for materials, a 12,000 word vocabulary that within like months. And now we're at the stage where we take it to subject matter experts, but he's got that with definitions. And this may be another thing that we could use that same technique for.
Yeah, that sounds very cool.
Yeah.
It would certainly be a first, I think, at least in the RDA context, but quite
You just
interesting.
get someone in this group who works on AI.
Yeah, I was just like, I was looking at you, but you couldn't tell.
Yeah, I was wondering about it too. I was thinking how, like, what are the tools or, but yeah, it is definitely cool. I mean, my long time ago background was also on ontologies, and it would be cool to see how AI and ontologies are coming together now.
Yeah, and I think that to some extent also that there are new groups within the RDA that I've seen are trying to incorporate more the AI aspects as well. Unfortunately, right on the 22nd, at the same time that we have this oh no, actually it's on the 21st. There's a group that talks about data discoverability and chatbots. So that's going to be an interesting session, or at least to some extent connected to what we are trying to do as well here. If you consider chatbots as one of the potential channels to interact with science, and there are several science chatbots that are available that do quite an interesting job, and they are employed for science communication. So yeah, AI is sweeping also in in this area. Okay, on the vocabulary side, we were thinking also that it might be good to, or it might be interesting to have that as a later on as a contribution to the more general resources like the Foster Open Science knowledge repository. They have quite a bit of information, definitions, training materials. So that can be one of the homes for the vocabulary. So then it's not just generated for itself, but it's actually going into a larger body of resources that the research and open science community is using. So that might be a suggestion on how to take this then forward. Yeah. So what are the next the other parts or groups that we can engage with within the RDA? I've mentioned these and they are in the charter, but if you have other suggestions on some of the other groups that we can connect this work with, and any other work. So this is a little bit of an open question to everyone. If you think that there's other relevant research that is ongoing at this time around open science, around science communication for research data that we should maybe consider for this work, it would be interesting to know.
Is there any group on data literacy?
I don't think so. Which is quite surprising, but I can.
Yeah, I don't know of one, but things happen. I don't know. I guess I just keep thinking on the early career side of things, where if you're teaching sort of data literacy, why not do the other end too? So understanding how to work with it, but also how to communicate. Like those could be paired, maybe. I'm not sure. It's just a thought, but.
Oh, I think they should be. If somebody's teaching data literacy, like the way I look at literacy, it also involves data side. From my point, visualizations and visualizations. But yeah, other people might see it differently. But it is a good point, and again, it kind of fits into that kind of way of looking at it through communication of data.
Yeah. I just think there's so many areas this is going to affect, like, sorry, anecdote, but trying to get my new strategic plan designed and laid out. And there's a section with a number of data visualizations or suggestions for them. The designer can't do them. So the designer has the skills in all sorts of things, but not in that. And then you've got people who have learned data visualization skills because they work with data. But I think the ubiquity of data visualizations is going to just like, it's going to keep, can it keep growing if it's already ubiquitous? You know what I mean? Like it's expanding in terms of who else needs that skill set. So yeah, really spitballing here. So
No, it's, yeah, well, science communication has an overlap with many domains. There's also like public engagement, and it also slightly moves into from that angle to into the patient management for health. So the patient engagement and understanding of well, the scientific process and the experience as a patient. So there are quite a few areas where it's right on the border, and there's a certain overlap. Yeah, data literacy is of course one of those, data visualization. Anything else?
I guess this should come up in the vocabulary or ontology.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I'm assuming I mentioned the data discoverability for the for the chatbots, but it is nonetheless one of the areas that that of course science communication can help with. So increasing the discoverability of data sets. Any other thoughts? Other groups that we might, or other research that you are familiar with, projects, activities? Yeah, this is also where I wanted to kind of connect it with some of the some of the ongoing work that we have on the, well, on the survey that I've already mentioned. And I'll share it with the group. Hopefully there will be interest and answers on your side. We'll try to open this up for all the members of RDA. It's a relatively short 15-minute survey that covers some of the questions that we have actually addressed in terms of audiences, stakeholders, career stages, tools, challenges that people foresee, type of training that they receive, how they think that science communication should be supported within their organizations. What are things that they would like to interact with maybe other practitioners, like data journalists or people working in data visualizations. How would their skill set be improved by interacting with them? And also a few questions related to the AI aspects of science communication. So I will share this, and it would be great, much appreciated if people can answer this. Some of this work will then feed into the activities of the group and vice versa. So, but I will also put this in the minutes and in the notes of the and in the follow-up from this meeting. We would be interested to learn if there are other ongoing research projects that are looking at science communication and specifically for research data. So yeah, in terms of the next steps for at least this first group of potential outputs from the group, we were hoping that we might be able to assign a few activity leads, so people who would like to maybe look at the vocabularies, would like to help develop the templates for the case studies, and people that might be more interested in the toolkit. So then hopefully the work is divided across more of us. Any thoughts, volunteers? I would assume at this point. Okay, yeah, it's work in progress. So we'll sort out the charter first, and then we will try to assign some activity leads who will be hopefully looking into how to build the vocabulary. So that sort of input, like the one you had, Medina, that would be much appreciated. Sorry, Medina is your surname, or? Yes, sorry, Andrea then. My mistake. Okay, good. Then the sort of second bigger area that we were hoping to look at, the second bigger direction for the group, revolves around the role of the science communicator. So who does this type of work within specific organizations? What are the competences that they have? How actually they are integrated within the organizations, whether they're part of a department that works across and supports all of the different research groups, whether they're specific for certain projects, and try to understand how this is mapped across different types of organizations, universities, or other research performing organizations, but also other organizations that actually work with data, whether they're technology providers, or they might be, I don't know, nonprofit that work, or policymakers. That's also a potential type of organization, and it would be interesting to see how these roles are defined in different contexts. I was hoping that we would be building on the experience of the professionalizing data stewardship interest group that actually has developed the model of the competences of the data stewards, a model that is implemented in different domains, and has sort of paved the way, I think, in a meaningful way for formalizing and structuring well these sort of roles. Have any of you worked closely with the group on professionalizing data stewardship? No. Well, I think that it's one of the groups that have been within the RDA for quite some time now, and they have several outputs that we can look at, and potentially in one of the next meetings of the group, we can actually invite one of the co-chairs or the chairs to tell us a little bit about their experience in building this profile and making it such a now broadly accepted role, I think, in many institutions. So people are looking for data stewards. So and I think that's been an effort that has taken quite a few years to come to fruition, but it's as I was saying, it's already something that has been tried out, and can become a sort of a model for how things can be done. Oh, okay. Lots of it still, yeah. Agreed. But yeah, it is nonetheless, I think, a successful example. And although it's taken quite a bit of time, it is a nice example, because or at least to the best of my knowledge and my recollection, everyone was saying, yeah, but data management is on everyone's desk. It's scattered. There isn't one person that actually looks into all of these aspects, which is a similar thing that often gets said about science communication, that it's on everyone's desk and you don't have a person who is specialized with a certain set of skills that can guide others in doing the work and can, well, of course, take some of that responsibility. So yeah. Yeah. Bahare, I see you have added something to the notes. Was I skipping a previous conversation?
Note,
Sorry,
note.
in the chat. Sorry.
Oh, I'm just chatting.
Okay. Okay, very good. Okay. Oh yeah.
Hi everyone. I've just been popping some things in the chat. Sorry, I joined late. My name's Jackie. I'm from Australia, and I'm a member of the Australian Science Communicators Board or Council or Committee, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things we're trying to do is to get the scientific community to recognise science communication as its own role. So we like to remind people that there are scientists who communicate their science, and they're great at doing that, but we also need dedicated science communicators who have the skills and the knowledge about how to best communicate science. And those people tend to be quite generalist and able to communicate lots of different types of science data, not just the specific thing that they research. And most of our science communicators on our council have actually stepped away from a research-focused career to doing the work of science communication across a wide range of different sciences. So we're actually really pushing for that at the moment, of trying to get that recognised. And in Australia, there are a couple of universities that offer both bachelor and master's programs in science communication, but there's only a couple. And predominantly in the Australian landscape, science communication is done by scientists who are just communicating about their particular science that they're interested in, rather than science communicators who have that broad skill set and can really engage with the general public and policymakers to explain complex concepts in a way that is more easy for them to grasp. So that's sort of a little bit about what the Australian science communicators are doing. It's a very small network of people in Australia, but we do have a board. I've popped the links to our website, and we actually have a conference upcoming in Perth in June, which unfortunately I won't be able to go to, but is held every 2 years, and is a great opportunity for us to come back together as a group and talk about the scholarship of science communication, actually how we do it, how do we communicate these complex things to the broader audience.
Thank you. That's very interesting. Yeah, it would be very nice to hear more about your experiences also in engaging and trying to promote the role, and what's the actual what are the actual steps that you're taking, what's the feedback from the community and the different communities, because I would assume that you have on the one hand the organizational structures that are in some cases quite rigid, but you might have better buy-in from the researchers themselves, who probably feel that this is something that they need help with. So yeah, I have not heard of a similar thing in Europe, but yeah, it's quite interesting. Do you have anything like that in any of the other regions? The US, North America?
I think we're fairly unique in Australia in that we have this organization. We were talking about this at a council meeting recently, that there's not really something the same elsewhere. So it would be good to hear if that's true or not.
In Europe, there is a network of they're more called consultants that help bridge the gap between science and policymakers, but they don't call themselves communicators. They're more of analysts and consultants, but basically this is what they actually do. So they translate or make very scientific information. They translate that, or as you were saying, very complex concepts into something that is more digestible, or maybe meets also to some extent clearer questions on the policymakers makers side. So I am familiar with that network in Europe.
Yeah, the other thing that we do really well in Australia, which is fairly unique as well, is we have a very strong push from government to have buy-in for an event called National Science Week, which runs in August every year. It's a public-facing event, and each the way that it's run is each state and territory have a committee that help run the event, which I'm the chair of here in my state. But basically the event has a small amount of money coming to it from the government that helps to kind of run it, but it's essentially we coordinate all of the different events that are put on during that week. So the events are not run by the government, they're run by different, you know, science groups or astronomy groups, or members, science communicators and things that are doing different events, and they can register on the website I just shared. And the National Science Week team kind of just help curate that through the website and vet the events to make sure that they're actually all scientific and giving good science information, nothing that's sort of wacky or misinformation as the case may be. So we do vetting of the events and we curate them, and they're all on yes, I know Canada does one too. So I think we were doing it first though, so but yeah, this event runs through August and is another way for scientists and science communication to happen. But this is very much a general public facing event, and it's a way to get the general public engaged in science and understanding complex science. So again, another way that science communication is happening in Australia. And we encourage scientists as well as science communicators to register events to try and communicate their science to the general audience. And we get a lot of buy-in from schools and kids and playgroups and families and things like that at these events. So I thought you might be interested to check that out as well.
Yeah, that's that's one of the categories or types of events that we've seen also in Europe. If you want to say something about your Canadian version of it.
No, I just learned right now that we have one. But what's
Okay.
interesting is that it looks like it started in 1970 as Canadian Science Writers Association, and then the communication term came in 2017. So that makes a little more sense. Yeah. I'm not familiar with them at all.
Okay. I mean, this is excellent crowdsourcing of similar things. I mean, in Europe we do have, how do you call that, science night, or yes. So
Yeah,
when usually there are
I think there's one in the UK as well, like a science. Yeah, so National Science Week is very much, yeah, the public getting, kids and families and things involved. And I'm pretty certain the UK do something similar to that now. And I'm pretty certain Canada does something similar to that now. But I think we were doing it first. But don't hold me to that. I'm not entirely certain. But I know that the Australian model of National Science Week has definitely been picked up elsewhere. Yeah.
I know of a series of events that are supported by the European Commission, where I mean, you have things like museums that are open throughout the night, and there are various activities to engage audiences of different ages with the information that is being. Yes, exactly. You're more familiar with the European than the Canadian. Of course. But yeah, that's another category for a different audience. And I think that these are quite successful. And they're also quite successful to engage the researchers and try to have them maybe to some extent open up a new type of possibility and opportunities, and get them a little bit down from their ivory tower without offending, of course, the researchers. But often it's yeah, it is said that they're kind of, well, they step away from the audiences. So yeah,
There's no other option. But considering the amount of work that's done and things that you have to kind of pass. So I think this by itself could be an issue, saying that the researchers sit in an ivory tower and are not bothered to communicate, while the issue is not them not being bothered, rather either not having the skills or not having the time or not having the kind of overall settings or incentives to be able to communicate. And unless we can find solutions to that, I think we're going to continue the same way we have been, with not very successful science communication.
The other thing I just wanted to let everyone know around in what's happening in Australia is that our funding agencies here are actually forcing our scientists to have to communicate their science as part of our funding requirements. So when we apply for funding now, we actually have to say how we've translated our research and how we've communicated our research to the public. There's more and more push to have our research findings available. Like most of the funders now require us to publish open access. Most of the funding criteria, like there's always within all of our kind of highest level grants here in Australia, requires a component of the application to talk about how you've translated your research up till now. So how have you engaged, how have you promoted it to communities or reported it back to the community when you did your research, or how have you engaged with the public? So it's actually becoming part of our funding landscape, which is why more and more of our scientists here are having to do communication and are being forced to kind of do it because they have to, otherwise they won't get more money. So yeah, exactly. It's one of the only ways to kind of force people. You've got to actually twist their arm and make them. So that's happening here. I don't know if that's happening elsewhere, but that's certainly the case in Australia.
I mean, it's happening definitely in Europe and in the UK. They're obsessed with impact cases now. But at the same time, there is zero or very little training actually connected to that push and force for the academics to teach them how to do it, or to give them some sort of an infrastructure or case studies or ways of doing it. So it's the push comes, but how to do it hasn't come properly.
And I wonder, no, I was gonna say, I wonder if there's some tensions there as well, like, I think for a long time, researchers were putting up a lot of stuff on ResearchGate, depending where you did your work, or academia.edu. But then, then there's ORCID IDs, and you should have your information there, and then there's Google Scholar, and that has H-index, and we don't want to use those things anymore. So there's a lot of that's not quite communicating things, but it is getting some of the word out, right? So there's some tensions. I think demonstrating pathways for useful science communication, what are the sorts of things you can do, and what is a good way is handy, would be very good. Yeah.
Kind of finding ways to tie them back into the whole incentive and reward system. If a paper is counted towards something, but a blog post isn't, then nobody has the time, and therefore nobody's gonna put the time on the blog post if it doesn't count towards something. Having said that, if there are kind of some sort of training to say, okay, if you have a blog post, or I don't know, some sort of other communication method, it is likely that you are going to end up having more citations, for example, for your paper. But yeah, it's kind of a whole loop that kind of needs to be completed, or a kind of circle.
Yeah, and there's smaller
sorry.
pieces of training around that, right? Like, make sure you put the DOI in the blog so that they don't cite your blog and it's your paper. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is that the landscape's changing. So 2, 3, 4 years ago, whenever I went to, as a scientist, I have my science hat on right now, not my science communication hat. So as a scientist working in a university setting, we do have trainings intermittently, how to engage with the media, how to communicate, how to, write for the conversation, or write for, one of these kinds of newspaper type magazine, online newspapers, how to engage with different platforms and social media. And so 3 or 4 years ago, it was very like, you have to have what was formerly called Twitter account. You have to get on and every time you publish, share your link, share this, put up put up your DOI, and those things then got counted into that, altmetrics score, and those plum metrics and things. And that was kind of, really pushed, like, you've got to share it and publicize and things. And obviously with the changing landscape, which I won't talk about further, but, the changing landscape of social media, people are shifting to other platforms. And, now what happens with altmetrics and plum, those kinds of metrics that you could use to show how well your piece of work is being engaged with, everyone's jumping out of the formerly Twitter platform to other locations for a variety of reasons. And the landscape's changing around how we communicate as scientists, how we communicate and where we engage. And do I need to delete my Twitter account and get an Instagram account, which I've been avoiding? Or everyone seems to be now just using LinkedIn like they used to use Twitter. I even know some people that have TikTok, but obviously then there's issues around that in particular countries and things. So it's kind of hard to know how to actually navigate this space sometimes as a scientist. Like, where do I go? Oh, it's all too hard, I'm just not even going to bother. Like, that's sort of where a lot of people are at sometimes as well. So it's tricky. It's a tricky landscape to try and work out how to actually do the science communication as a scientist, which I think is why it's even more important that there's people that are trained science communicators who know how to navigate it, who can support us to do it. Yeah, RIP Twitter. It died a death.
Yeah.
If this group could sort out which social media platform we're all supposed to use now, that would be a massive accomplishment. You think you could handle that?
Nope.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Blue Sky, Mastodon, Threads, LinkedIn, like I've opened accounts everywhere and I don't use any of them.
I think that's a problem though, isn't it? You know, like once you have
It is.
you can curate one, but if you have to have one on every platform, it's unwieldy. We don't have time. You don't then have time to actually do the science work. You're too busy writing tweets and threads and this and that. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you think back to the scientists in the 80s, you know, and the 70s and 80s during the golden period. They didn't have to do any of this stuff, you know, and like they're all they were like, what's the problem?
Paper.
What are you complaining about? You know, just do the work. It's easy. Well, now we have to do all these other things to actually have impact and show that our research has meaning. And they didn't have to do that back in the 70s and 80s during the golden.
They couldn't even find literature because they had to kind of move around and I don't know, find them in different libraries. So I guess they only knew the literature of their own library. I don't
Yeah,
know.
they saved on the literature review because now everything's available digitally, but they have to do other things like research data management, science communication, funding, just to say a few of the sort of skills that are required from researchers. So yeah, for the reasons that you've mentioned, and also for the fact that this is supposed to be something that supports the researcher, I think that it would be beneficial for this role of the science communicator to be better formalized and professionalized, and for them to have a role within organizations, and yeah, to be able to support, just like the data stewards. I see a lot of a lot of parallels from what you have said between the two roles.
But we don't have
that are-
data in the universities. Maybe in the organizations, but
Some organizations have. I mean, I think it's a
You're in the
group.
Netherlands, you do.
Sorry?
If you're in the Netherlands, you have lots of data stewards at universities.
oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah. But they're special.
But but you do have, I mean, there are similar to data stewards, there are roles that have been now taken up in libraries where there are people that support the research data management. So I think that kind of falls under the broader umbrella of the data stewards.
Yeah, okay, we have, I think, around 5 minutes left. Just maybe a wrap up, but also Natalie asked me a question, and I thought we should put the question back to you, Timea, about the surveys. If you could maybe give a bit of some information about the two surveys that you have, and that one is individual and one is organizational, because I think there could be a little bit of a confusion as to which aspect should we kind of respond to the survey from. So if, yeah.
Yeah, so my hope was to open the one that I've mentioned here, and I've put in the link. I couldn't shorten it because for some reason, I am assuming it's for security reasons, the survey link cannot be shortened, but this is for the individual practices, and it will just cover things that individual researchers have to do, and how well they perform as I was mentioning, you know, audiences, training, their role within the organization, how they feel they have been supported, how they feel they should be supported, what are the challenges that they see, what are the things that work very well, like success stories in terms of science communication. So there are roughly 20 or so questions. So we calculated it's around 15 minutes. It would take around 15 minutes to fill in the survey, but it's also at the discretion of the person who answers how much detail they would like to add to the questions.
So
The individual one will be followed by an organizational one, but I'm hoping that I can take the path for the organizational one through the organizational structures of RDA. So with that one, to avoid confusion, won't be open also to the very broad individuals.
Okay, so this is individual, but in the context of a person's organization.
Yes. Yes. And then the second one kind of focuses. Yeah,
Lovely.
she's frowning. Well, what we would, so her point was that there are questions that also refer to their organization, like size of the organization, or
Okay.
how they work within their organization, whether they're part of a group, a department, whether they do communication individually or part of the projects that they're working on, to kind of understand what's the actual practice, if it's individually driven, if it's driven by the organizational policies, and how the organization actually supports them in the science communication that they're doing. If there's training, if they have departments that are specifically providing resources, if there are other means to that their organizations actually support them. Again, to try to kind of place them within different types of organizations, how these works happen. But yeah,
That's now, yeah.
I'll
Okay.
follow up with the link. Thank you.
And in terms of follow-up on the group, is there anything you'd like to kind of say before we all go to sleep? Some
Yeah.
of you up.
especially us. So I've summarized here a few of the next steps that we were thinking for the interest group charter. So we would like to keep the document open until roughly the 10th of June. I'll launch a couple of calls to the group for internal reviewers who would like to kind of have a go at the document and make some suggestions, edits, etc. And if there are any chairs interested in actually joining myself and Bahare as co-chairs of the group, we would like to have hopefully a kind of like nice geographical distribution. So you can't tell, but I am looking at you. Okay. She was actually waving goodbye, but yeah, we'll follow up. And then the next steps for the submission would be to actually submit the charter to for the community review. And then in terms of the topics, yeah, as I mentioned, we will try to follow these 3 directions. So the vocabulary, the case studies to start with in terms of the topics, and then try to maybe get someone from the data stewardship group to guide us for the definition of the role of the science communicator. We'll share the slides as well, and a follow-up email with the actions. Hopefully, we will get more offline contributions. Yes.
And it's action on the shared collaborative notes for everyone to add their names. Some names are already there. But if you haven't added your name, please do. So we can be in touch with you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well,
Time
thank
to
you
sleep.
yeah, we're ready for sleep. Well, thank you for staying with us for this long, and for the input. It's much appreciated. It's nice to see
Good
everyone.
undertaking.
What's that?
It's a good undertaking. I think it's really, we really need a lot on this, so. Luck, yeah.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Good night, good morning, good middle of day. in the Atlantic. Okay.